What does it really mean to be poor? For many people, the answer seems simple. You don't have enough money. But poverty isn't always the same. Two people can both be struggling financially, yet their problems can be completely different. One person may have a job, but still not earn enough to cover basic needs. Another may desperately want to work, but cannot find stable employment. And another may have a decent income, but is trapped under loans, credit cards, and other debts. That's why in this video, we'll look at 3 different financial situations that can lead to poverty or persistent financial hardship: the working poor, the unemployed poor, and the debt poor. Understanding these differences matters because the solution isn't always the same. Sometimes the problem is income, sometimes it's access to employment, and sometimes it's debt. So let's take a closer look.
The working poor. The first type is perhaps one of the most misunderstood: the working poor. These are people who work, earn an income, and contribute to society, but their income isn't enough to provide financial security. They may have a full-time job. They may work overtime. They may even have multiple jobs. And yet, at the end of the month, there's still little or nothing left. Being employed doesn't automatically mean being financially secure. Imagine someone earning around $350 a month. At first, that amount might sound like income, but now consider the expenses: rent, food, transportation, electricity, water, phone and internet, school expenses, medical costs, and family responsibilities. After everything is paid, perhaps only a few dollars remain, or maybe nothing remains at all. And if that person suddenly needs $100 or $200 for an emergency, they may have no savings to cover it. This is how someone can have a job and still live paycheck to paycheck.
Why does this happen? There are several possible reasons. The first is low wages. If wages don't keep up with the cost of living, workers can remain financially vulnerable even when they're employed. The second is high living costs. Housing, food, transportation, and other necessities can consume most of a person's income. The third is unstable employment. Some workers technically have jobs, but don't receive consistent hours or predictable income. And the fourth is family responsibility. In many households, one worker isn't supporting only themselves. They may also be supporting parents, children, siblings, or other relatives. So the problem isn't necessarily that the person doesn't work hard. Sometimes the numbers simply don't work. The danger of the working poor trap. The biggest problem is that there's very little room for mistakes. One broken appliance, one medical emergency, one missed paycheck, one unexpected bill. And suddenly, the person needs to borrow money. Then the next paycheck is used to repay the loan, and another emergency happens. The cycle continues. This can create a situation where someone is working constantly, but never building wealth. They're surviving, but they're not progressing. And this leads us to an important lesson. Income is important, but income alone doesn't guarantee financial stability.
2. The unemployed poor. The second type is the unemployed poor. These are people who don't currently have a job or stable source of income. But it's important not to assume that unemployment simply means someone is lazy. There are many reasons a person can become unemployed. A company may close, a worker may be laid off, an industry may disappear. A person may live in an area with very few employment opportunities. Someone may lack the qualifications required for available jobs. Transportation may be too expensive. Or they may spend months searching without finding a position that pays enough to survive. Consider someone who loses a job that paid $600 a month. At first, they might have some savings. They start applying for new positions, they attend interviews, they send resumes. But weeks become months. The savings disappear. Bills continue. Rent continues. Food still has to be purchased. Eventually, they may start borrowing money. And once debt begins accumulating, unemployment can become even harder to escape.
The employment gap. One of the biggest challenges facing unemployed people is what we could call an employment gap. The longer someone stays unemployed, the more difficult it can sometimes become to return to the workforce. Their skills may become outdated, their confidence may decrease, their professional connections may disappear, and employers may ask about the gap in their employment history. This can create a vicious cycle. No job means no income. No income means fewer resources. Fewer resources can make job hunting harder, and difficulty finding work leads to longer unemployment.
The importance of skills. For someone in this situation, one of the most valuable assets may not be money. It may be skills. Learning a useful skill can potentially increase employment opportunities. Digital skills, technical skills, sales, customer service, programming, design, accounting, construction, repair work, healthcare-related skills, or other skills that have demand in the local economy. But learning a skill isn't always easy when someone is already struggling financially. That's why education, training programs, community support, and employment opportunities can play an important role. The unemployed poor don't necessarily need judgment. They need pathways back into productive employment.
3. The debt poor. Now we come to the third type, the debt poor. This is a person whose financial situation is heavily damaged by debt. And this category can be particularly complicated because someone doesn't necessarily have to be unemployed or have extremely low income to become trapped by debt. A person can earn a reasonable salary and still become financially poor because too much of their income is committed to repayments. Imagine someone earning $700 per month. That might sound comfortable depending on where they live. But suppose they have a car loan, credit card balances, personal loans, installment payments, and other financial obligations. If $400 or $500 of their monthly income is already committed to debt payments, their actual financial freedom may be very limited. They may look financially comfortable from the outside, but financially, they're struggling.
How the debt trap works.
Debt often becomes dangerous when borrowing is used to pay for previous borrowing. For example, a person borrows money because they don't have enough cash. Then another bill arrives, so they borrow again. Then they use part of the next paycheck to repay the first loan. But now they don't have enough money for living expenses, so they borrow again. This creates a cycle. Borrow, repay, borrow again. And if interest and fees accumulate, the amount owed can grow faster than expected. Eventually, a large portion of the person's income goes towards servicing old financial obligations. Instead of building savings, they're paying yesterday's bills. Instead of investing, they're making repayments. Instead of preparing for emergencies, they're trying to survive until the next payday.
Debt is not always bad, but there's an important distinction. Not all debt is automatically bad. Some forms of borrowing can help people purchase assets, obtain education, start businesses, or handle major necessary expenses. The problem is when debt becomes unmanageable. The question isn't simply, do you have debt? A better question is, can you comfortably manage the debt with your current income? If the answer is no, the debt can become a serious financial burden.
3 different problems. Now let's put the 3 situations side by side. The working poor have income, but not enough financial breathing room because they don't have stable employment. The debt poor may have income, but too much of it is already committed to debt. And that's why one solution cannot fix every financial problem. For the working poor, increasing income and controlling essential expenses may be critical. For the unemployed, finding stable employment and developing marketable skills may be the priority. For the debt poor, Debt management and rebuilding cash flow may be the priority. And sometimes a person can belong to more than one category. Someone can be unemployed and heavily in debt. Someone can be working and heavily in debt. Someone can be working while supporting an unemployed family member. Financial hardship isn't always a single problem. Sometimes several problems happen at the same time.
Why people can get stuck. One of the biggest misconceptions about poverty is that it always comes down to personal choices. Choices certainly matter, but circumstances matter too. Where someone is born, their education, their access to transportation, the jobs available in their area, their family responsibilities, unexpected emergencies, economic conditions, and access to financial resources can all influence someone's financial situation. This doesn't mean personal responsibility doesn't matter. It means we should understand the entire picture. A person who is already struggling financially has less room to make mistakes. For someone with $20 in their bank account, an unexpected $100 expense can be devastating. For someone with $20,000 in savings, the same expense may barely matter. The same emergency can have completely different consequences depending on someone's financial position.
How can someone break the cycle? There is no single solution, but there are several principles that can help. First, understand your cash flow. Know how much money comes in, know how much goes out, and know where the money is going. You cannot improve what you don't measure. Second, build an emergency buffer. Even a small emergency fund can provide protection against unexpected expenses. The goal isn't to become rich overnight. The goal is to create breathing room. Third, increase your earning power. Reducing expenses has limits. You can only cut so much. Increasing income can create much more room. That could mean learning a new skill, pursuing better employment, taking additional work, improving a business, or finding another legitimate source of income. Fourth, control high-cost debt. If debt is consuming your income, understanding the interest rates, fees, minimum payments, and repayment schedule is critical. Don't simply look at the monthly payment. Understand the total cost. Fifth, avoid comparing your life to other people. Someone can look rich and still be financially unstable. A person driving an expensive car may be deeply in debt. Someone living in a modest home may have substantial savings. Appearance doesn't reveal financial health. The biggest lesson, perhaps the biggest lesson, is this. Poverty isn't one single experience. The working poor, the unemployed poor, and the debt poor can all experience financial hardship, but for very different reasons. And if we want to understand poverty, we need to look beyond someone's paycheck. We need to look at their expenses, their employment situation, their debts, their responsibilities, their opportunities, and their ability to recover from unexpected financial problems. Most importantly, we should remember that a person's financial situation doesn't define their value as a human being. Being poor isn't a character flaw. Being unemployed doesn't automatically mean being lazy. And having debt doesn't automatically mean being irresponsible. People can make mistakes, but people can also face circumstances that are outside their control. The important thing is understanding the problem clearly enough to find a path forward. So, which of these three situations do you think is the hardest to escape? The working poor, the unemployed poor, or the debt poor? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this video informative, consider subscribing for more videos about money, poverty, wealth, and the realities of financial life. Because understanding money isn't just about becoming rich. Sometimes it's about understanding why people struggle and how they can eventually break the cycle. Thanks for watching.